Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening and welcome to the September 27th edition of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight, and my co-host is handling some business and she doesn't think she'll be on tonight at all. I told her she gets a few minutes to just pop in, and so you all get me for the whole night. And so I'm excited, as I always am every week, and welcome to the show. We have another amazing lineup again this week, like we always do. And since I'm by myself, I'm going to be having to go do a little bit of back and forth. We will have our first guest on momentarily, but before we bring our first guest on, I am going to give away 2 books, and these are actual books, not advanced reading copies. Before I do that, I do want to remind everybody about the 2022 National Black Book Festival. It's imminent. It's in 4 weeks, and so it's almost upon us. It's hard to believe, but we're almost there, and we have a wonderful weekend planned for that. So for the 2 books we're giving away, for those of you who are early tuners in, I think that's the way to say it, we have 2 books. The first one is No Stone Unturned by Brandon Massey. And to win this book, the trivia question is, the main character, Eric Newton, discovers he has an adult daughter. What is her name? So the first person, and because Ron is not here, I can't type in the question, so I'm going to repeat it. The main character, Eric Newton, discovers he has an adult daughter that he didn't know he had. What is her name? So we'll check the answers later on. So our next one, this is a hardcover book, and some of you probably have heard about it. It's called Memphis by Tara Stringfellow. And to get this hardcover book, all you have to do is answer this question. The author, Tara Stringfellow has a dog. So what is her dog's name? What is the author's dog's name? If you answer it, you'll get the book. And we'll check after this first interview. So we're going to bring our first guest on, and his name is Boyah, and I believe his last name is pronounced Farah, but if I didn't pronounce it correctly, hopefully he will correct me. And he clicked something and he's gone, so hopefully he'll come back. So let me see, maybe I can check the answers to the trivia question, because I think he must have clicked something, clicked the wrong thing, and I hope he logs back in. So Stephanie Burnham won the first book, and Stephanie is a perpetual repeat winner of books on the show. The answer for this one was Destiny, was his adult daughter's name. So Stephanie, the book will be on its way to you. And so after that, let's see if anybody else has answered anything. Not yet. So I'm waiting for him to come back on, because he was there and then he clicked something and he was gone. So he needs to log back on to the Zoom. There he is. Okay. But before, as I'm bringing him back on, for those of you all who want to get tickets to the special events, the deadline is October 10th, so you still have time. And we have 3 special events at the National Black Book Festival. So, boy, we lost you for a minute. You must have clicked the wrong thing.
I did.
Now,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you and see you. So welcome to Black Authors Matter TV, and congratulations on your memoir being released earlier this month. Do you have a copy of your book?
Thank you very much. I do. It is right here.
Okay, and it's called America Made Me a Black Man.
America Made Me a Black Man.
This is going to be an interesting interview, because I wanted to hear more about your experiences based on you being here in the United States. I read the backstory about the book, and you were born in Somalia. So
Yes.
how long, when did you come to the United States?
I came to the United States in 1993 in the height of the Somali Civil War.
Oh, okay. How old were you?
I was 15 years old.
Okay, so you were a teenager.
Yes.
And so you weren't like a small kid where you would have no memory of your upbringing. You had memories, and you had a culture that you brought with you to the United States.
Yes, I had a culture. I had I remember everything about, I was men. I mean, I was not. In Africa, when you're 7 or 8 years old, you are a man in the making. I was a complete man in the eyes of African culture.
Oh, well, we need to adopt some more of that here. I think we would have less issues if we told our 7 to 8-year-old males that, if that was part of what we told them when they were growing up. So that's an expectation.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you're 6 or 7 years old, your own father tells you crying is gone. You're a man in the house. Even though you're a boy, you're expected to be a man, especially in the nomadic culture of my father. So right when they instill that inside of you that you're no longer, you're expected a lot, right? From 6, 7, 8, 9. By the time you're 10, you are sitting with the elderly and listening to what they're saying, and make sure that you understand poetry and adult language.
That's really amazing, and that's great. I think that's wonderful. So did your family come with you?
Yes.
Okay, so your entire immediate family?
Yes.
Okay, and then once you got to, where did you settle in the United States? Where did you?
In New England, a small town called Bedford.
Okay.
All white town.
Massachusetts, is that a Massachusetts?
Massachusetts, right? Yes.
Okay, okay. It was all white town.
It was all white town. I've never seen so many
you know
white people
why you all moved there? Why did you select there as opposed to maybe New York or
my
somewhere
sister
else on
was
the
already
East
living
Coast?
there.
I'm sorry.
My sister, my elderly sister, the oldest sister in the family, was already settled there.
Okay. All right. So you already had a connection there.
We had connections there.
So you said once you came to America, just tell us about how some of that evolved and how your some of the experiences you had, especially some of the negative experiences.
Well, an African child who's running away from war, coming to America, and all you think about America is a heaven. You're entering the gate of heaven. You don't know much about the struggle of African Americans, because the story that you're told in Africa is a story that says African Americans are not people that want to work hard, because the projection of the image that they projected outside of America is negative. So when you come here, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna work hard. I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. But really, you don't even know that. You don't know what you don't know until you get here and you yourself become an African American, and you're treated the same way that African Americans are treated in this country. That has been a process for me to understand. So coming to Bedford, it was absolutely gorgeous. The grass is green, it's trimmed. Bedford High School was absolutely beautiful. But I wasn't really an American until I begin to drive, until I learn how to drive and you get stopped by the cops, until I get a job and I get fired so many times. That's when you actually begin to know the real American that awaits you. And that's how this book was born, out of that struggle of knowing.
Now, something that you said was very interesting, and I found that to be the case with many cultures outside of the United States, and their perceptions of African Americans before they get here, and that their perception has already been basically baked in before
Yes.
they get here. And then lots of times when we as African Americans encounter people from other countries, we get treated worse than white people treat us.
Indeed.
I mean, it's because they've already been programmed that something is wrong with us or bad about us. We don't need to be respected, or they hold us in contempt. Or so you've validated some of that with just what you heard. You're saying you heard that African Americans don't want to work hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about imagery. A lot of
Yes.
the projection of imagery of in the media is negative.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they feed you with a story that does not belong to the African Americans. When you're sitting in Africa, that's all you're taking. You're consuming that bad information. And when you come here, I remember the first bus I ever taken from Bedford to a place called Lexington to hop on a train. Two
Okay.
African American boys came inside the bus, and I'm sitting in the back. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, I'm afraid of them. I'm like, oh, are they gonna rob me? But the fact, I had nothing. I was incredibly poor kid from Africa, straight from a refugee camp. I should be the one that they should be afraid of, in a way, because I'm a skinny kid. I don't have good clothes. I don't understand the culture. I'm different. But because your head is, all those images inside your head, you are really petrified of those two guys, to young people trying to come in and rob you. That picture did not belong to me. Also, the picture that's fed to the African Americans here, or Black Americans, or American, minorities here about Africa is the same thing. When we're here watching Africa, what do we see? We see naked Africans, running behind, in the jungle, or eating monkey meat, and that story is not real. I grew up in a valley. I grew up with my grandmother with goats and, sheep and whatever, the camels. I've never seen a naked Africans. You know what I mean? So when you're sitting here watching Africa, I see naked Africans. So if I don't know anything about Africa, what would I think about Africans? The same thing. So this perception of Africans thinking negative about African Americans and African Americans thinking negative about Africans does not belong to us. And this book is part of that. I want this book to bridge that divide of the lie that separates the two communities.
Well, that's, you've explained why imagery is so important. Creating
Very
your
important.
own imagery is so important.
Yes.
One of the things that we do on this show is we have slain the myth that we don't read or we're not into literature, because we have had so many African American authors and people all over that are involved with literature. Most of them are authors, but we have book clubs and bookstores. Last week we had the president of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. We have agents, we have publishers, we have people who do book projects, we have bookstore owners, we have people, tonight, besides you, we have a bookstore owner. We have a lady who created an initiative for Black high schoolers called Black is Lit. And then we have another author who has historical book. So we try to do all we can with the show to slay any perceptions that we're not literate, and that literature is not moving, and that it's not being created and developed all the time among African Americans. So if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
45.
Okay, 45. So you've been here since you were 15, so that's 30 years.
30 years. 30 years I get to know America.
Okay.
30 years I get to know that what African Americans have been complaining about is real. I am now an African American myself. I'm a Black man living in America. The pain that I have is the pain that all my African-American colleagues have. And I claim this in the book, that racism is worse than war, because war, you cannot inherit. War is immediate. You go to war, your children doesn't inherit. But racism is generational. Your kids watch you struggle from job to job. They get to see that. Your children see you, going into substance because you're so stressed out. You don't know what to do. Your children see you fighting, so that has an impact on the children. So racism is generational. You can inherit it, but war, you cannot, because I've seen both. I've seen war, I've seen refugee camp, I've seen many struggles. Racism is the worst. Racism is the cousin of death. It's not just the cousin of death, but the cousin of an excruciating death. And it needs to be, we got to fight it.
Okay, so when you got your education, and I'm assuming you did, what field did you pursue?
In undergrad, I didn't know exactly what I was doing. So my
Most
roommate,
of us don't.
there's no roadmap.
Figure it out.
I didn't inherit, mom educated. Like my mother came here, never learned the language. I'm the first one to graduate from high school, college. So, I had to figure things out. So I asked my roommate, who was from Vietnam, after many other roommates. And he was like, hey, what are you studying? He's like, management information system. I was like, okay, put me in. So my undergrad, I got a management information system. In a grad, I got an instructional design. So I have a master's degree.
Okay, all right. And so have you experienced your experiences with racism? Have they been basically at every level?
Every level possible. I just got stopped 2 days ago because I'm a writer now, so I stayed in my cave, my writing cave, to write. Okay. And sometimes I want to get out, and sometimes I like to listen to Tupac, And the other 2 days ago, literally 2 days ago, I was listening to music, Tupac, and driving. I got followed, and I swear to God, I already knew it was gonna follow me. A car follows me, and follows me. Second light, he stops me. I pull my phone out and start recording him. And he felt embarrassed that he stopped me because he didn't know what to say. So he basically asked me if I have a record, when was the last time I got a ticket, stupid questions like that. But I learned to apologize for survival, so that I don't aggravate this guy to give me a hard time, you know what I mean? So I was like, I'm sorry, man. And he felt bad, and he actually walked away. And I only stayed there less than a minute, really. But why did you stop me if you don't even know why you stopped me? So I've seen enough racism to aggravate me.
Yeah. Do you still live in Bedford?
No.
Okay.
I live around here. I'm not far from there.
Oh, okay. You're still in Massachusetts.
Yes.
Okay. Well, not every state in New England is enlightened. I've only made a couple of trips in Massachusetts, and I tell people one time I went to Boston. Yeah. The weather was cold and the people were cold. And a lot of people don't realize it. And this happened before you came to the United States, when they integrated schools in the 1970s. Yeah. Boston was one of the worst. I mean, they had some situations in Boston that were worse than some of the things that happened in the South. So, not every New England state is enlightened.
Well, I'm a nomad, and I value freedom over death. Literally, my father said, "Be free until you die." So my father was, may he rest in peace, was a fighter. My grandfather was a fighter. His father was a fighter. I came from a man who determined and fought their freedom. So I always had a hard time, becoming a second-class citizen, or the hierarchy that exists that they don't really tell you. But America really, especially New England where I'm at, they don't really tell you they're racist. They actually show you.
Right. No, you're right.
They show you. You're right. They tell you they love you, but they show you.
Yeah, some of the worst racism I experienced was in the North. not the South. I mean, in the South, people let you know if they don't like you up front. So then you just but some of the people that you would think were completely rednecks and good old boys, they can be some of the nicest people because they're honest. They're honest, and if they like you, they like you. You know, so it's just, I really can feel for your situation. Now, what in terms of you being a Somalian American? Do people recognize you as Somalian or African, or do they recognize you as basically an African American, a Black person?
Well, racism is democratic in America, and and it's not individual. What I have discovered, racism is not individual; it's systematic. The system doesn't really care, you know, who you are. The main character in the book, his name is Derek. Derek and I went through hell. You know, rest in peace, he didn't make it. But the pain that he went through, I was in denial. The first teachers about America and how racist America is as African Americans. But I really wanna, because I came from death and I came from war and I came from tragedies, and America was the only country that allowed us in, I had that guilty feeling of saying, no, even to this day, my mom says, if you're gonna write something about America, make sure it says, you know, good things because they allowed us. You know what I mean? That contradictory, you know, feelings. I've always had that. I always said, you know what? If I work a little bit harder, I'll be okay. But my first teachers were truth tellers, African Americans. A lot of them, I honor them in the book. And so I denied and denied and denied, but racism has been democratic the whole time I've been here. I mean, sometimes they do recognize you're different, but that recognition is not an honest one. It's the one that says, you know, you're different. Let me use you against your own, and that is not something that I can do. That will be spitting on my father's grave. That'll never happen.
Yeah, well, you know, that happens sometimes among, you know, for us that are born here. Sometimes a person will say, and supposedly they think they're giving you a compliment. They'll tell you that you're different. You're not like the other Black people. And I'm like, okay, you are off base. And so who do you actually know? That's what I asked them. Who do you actually know? And really, that's not something that you say to people. That's what I said.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, I am, you know, I was my father's son. I belonged to my father, you know, and I had to honor his words. The only legacy I have from him is words, and I must honor that. And his words is, be you, be true to yourself, and don't betray your own soul. And if I do something contrary to that, it is as if I'm betraying my own soul, my own father's words and culture. And this book honors that, you know. And I do honor my first teachers, Miss Parker, Derek, Malcolm. I read the first book I ever read was Malcolm's
autobiography.
Yes, and my first English teacher, hip hop, Tupac. You know, listening to Tupac, I learned a lot, you know, about the language. So I honor all of that in the book, and I also make sure that the bridge is, you know, the broken bridge is fixed between the African Americans and the Africans, and somehow I think I kind of reached that because I got an email the other day that says a moving email from an African American professor that says the book reminded him of his ancestors, and trust me, I felt incredibly proud that the book actually made those, you know, that
made that connection.
I love that. You know, I want to make sure that this literature bridges the divide and bridges what's broken. The bridge has been broken. This is going to fix it. So it's very important that young people are allowed to claim that they came from there and visit because the continent is absolutely gorgeous.
That's what I haven't visited yet. I want to introduce you to my co-host, Rhonda. I didn't know she was going to be on. Now, are you going to be able to be on the whole time, or you just on for a minute?
No, I will be on the rest of the time.
The rest of the night. Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad. So we've been speaking with Boyah and with his memoir, and he's really been enlightening us about his journey from Somalia and his experience since he's been in the United States. And so, Boyah, moving forward, what do you see for your future? Do you have a family? Have you?
Yes, I took my family to Africa. They didn't, they stayed there for 1 year. They didn't really like it because there's no fast foods in that part of the world, especially in Somalia. They're Americanized, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So funny.
But the connections made, and that's what's important.
Right.
The
Now,
connection
what
for
is
them
the
to go back
climate?
and claim.
What is the climate like in Somalia now?
One part of Somalia is tropical, the other part of Somalia is desert. It's mostly desert.
Oh no, I meant the political climate, like
the
that.
political climate.
Mhm.
It's the struggle is on.
Okay.
It's
So
the
they're not
struggle
still
on
are they still
colonial
at
power.
war? It's not still a war going on, is it?
No, there's no war. There's political instability in the capital city. The rest of Somalia is very safe.
Okay.
It's just the center of gravity. The capital city is still not,
Right.
at peace. And it has nothing to do with the Somalis. It has nothing to do with the Africans. It's called colonial struggle for control.
Oh, okay. Now, what country colonized Somalia?
The British.
Was it the British? Okay.
Yes.
My husband used to. He knows every African country and what country colonized it. He like really intensely studied that when he was in college. So so what do you what are your plans like for this book? What do you hope to accomplish with reaching people, and what do you want people to gain from reading your book?
I want them to get. I think they'll gain a restoration of the spirit, the restoration of the identity. And a lot of us, after you go through intense racism, piece of you is missing, because you ask, I experienced racism only when I learned to drive, and then I experience racism when I get a job. And sometimes when your own country rejects you, where do you belong? You don't belong anywhere. So I really thought that America is my adopted country. I came to this country. I love this country, but I want this country to reciprocate my love. And that's what I think what Black people want. Black people love this country. They're not going anywhere. They want the love to be reciprocated. And I think the reader will gain that we love America. I love America, but I want America to use a merit-based system just to reciprocate the love. And I want children, the Black children, to read this book and understanding that they are bigger than the hood, they're bigger than their neighborhood, they're bigger than the US. They are connected. They have an ancestral link. They have a place to belong. That kind of, I wrote this book from a position of, not a position for minority, but a position of strength. A position of like Malcolm's spirit, like Tupac's spirit. That's how I wrote this book. And I really want young people to read it so they can restore, what's missing. I hope that's my hope, that this book will do that. And some of it, I think it's doing it, because I've been getting a few, almost every day I get one email. So through social media from somewhere, most of it African Americans, that says, I read your book. I love everything about this. When is the next book? Where can I find other work? So I think part of me is proud that I did that.
Well, I will say this: if your book is even half as interesting and half as passionate as you are as you speak, it should be a very enchanting book, and I look forward to reading it myself.
I wrote it from that voice. I absolutely wrote a voice that has no fear. Is how I wrote it. Yeah. Yes,
Well,
and it's triggered by, and it was also triggered by, God bless the dead, George Floyd.
yes.
When I watched the video, that's when I began actually to write this. So, it's the book begins with that, so it's incredibly powerful, and
Well,
it begins
unfortunately,
with death. Yes, sorry.
well, I was just gonna say, unfortunately, we're at the end of the half hour.
Okay.
So if, real quick, if you can just remind everyone where they can find your book and how they can connect with you.
I'm on the book is available almost everywhere. I have a Twitter, Boyah Farah. I have a website, boyahfarah.com. I have a LinkedIn, Boyah Farah, and I also have Instagram, Boyah Farah. But also the book can be found almost everywhere. Target, Barnes and Nobles, everywhere where books are sold, the book is there.
Well,
Okay.
well, best wishes on your book. Keep doing what you're doing, keep inspiring, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the love.
Congratulations on releasing your memoir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, you have a
Okay.
wonderful night. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was nice. I only got 5 minutes of the interview, but that was a good 5
It
minutes.
was very interesting. It was very interesting. And I'm glad you're on because, I feel lonely when I'm on here by myself.
Well, I don't want you to be lonely, Gwen.
I did have 2 books to give away, and one of them I found the name of the one of them was Stephanie, and the second book was this book, Memphis, and by Tara Stringfellow, and Tony Benita won this one.
I was about to say, was it about the dog being named Huckleberry?
Yes, it was.
Yep.
The dog's name was Huckleberry. So Tony Benita and Stephanie, your books are on the way. Stephanie won this one and Tony Benita won this one. Your books will be on the way. So our next guest is Tiffany Herndon. And Tiffany she's founder of a program called Black is Lit, and it's designed to encourage high schoolers to read African American literature, from what I understand. But if I don't have the total correct understanding, she will correct me. And we want to welcome you to Black Authors Matter TV.
Hello, it's nice to be here with you this evening.
It's nice to have you. Thank you.
Okay, so tell us about Black is Lit and exactly what it is, so for the audience, so they know exactly what it is.
So Black is Lit is a program that is meant to encourage Black student literacy. So what we're looking at is being able to support disruption of the school to prison pipeline by encouraging our students, our Black scholars, to read. So what we go by as our motto is literacy is liberation and education is empowerment. And we're leaning into the old ways of African American literary societies. And so with Black is Lit, they're actually learning literacy skills, literary skills, critical thinking skills, and we're doing this with a culturally responsive lens. So as of now, we launched a Lit Leadership Academy and piloted that last year, and that's 9 through 12. And then our goal is to spiral all the way down to TK5 so that we can support early literacy as well.
Wow. So this sounds like an amazing program because, in this day and age where kids have so many other distractions, movies, video games, the internet, when you're able to get a child to actually sit down long enough to read a book, that's a huge feat in itself. So I just wonder how you came up with this idea and how were you able to encourage the kids to want to read?
So I am a Black educator. I was actually a history teacher. So a large part of my class actually focused on building literacy skills through reading and writing. I predominantly taught to Black and Brown children, so the most marginalized group, and noticing that there's a large gap in the literacy rates and achievement gap between, our scholars of color and those that are not of color. A lot of that is around low literacy rates. So if you don't have the ability to read the text and understand what it is that you're like coming away with some way of comprehension and being able to elaborate on that, then we're not able to properly prepare you for college. I was working with a group of educators at my school site at the time, and then we went on to form what is now Nzinga Incorporated. And one of the educators, Whaley-Williams, was remarking, we were looking at our GPAs during COVID, and they were really low for Black students. And so it's like, man, we need to do something over the summer to get our kids reading. And then it actually just kind of grew and grew. And so what it is now is we moved beyond like a summer book program. We figured out like, let's actually do Common Core AG standards, wrapping it into the social justice standards. And it's actually teach our students literacy skills rather than just getting them together to read and discuss a book. And so with this, we started promoting the program. And what we did is a Lit Leadership Academy. So those students actually come and they worked with us last year. They read the book, Kimberly Johnson's book, This Is My America. And so what we do is we're going to choose a book each year that actually is like founded on like a social justice issue that's adversely impacting the Black community. So Kimberly Johnson's book, This Is My America, is closely like founded upon like the basically like the battles that we face or impediments that we face in the community around mass incarceration and the prison industrial complex. So this is what the students are coalescing around. So they read the book, we wrap it into Goldie Muhammad's framework for historical literacy, her framework with our Black Genius blueprint. And the students actually, they really get hyped up around the social justice component of it. So they create a social change project. And for this is mass incarceration, prison industrial complex, and they figure out how they want to address or raise awareness to that particular issue. And through that, we're actually empowering them through reading the book, increasing like their own literacy and critical thinking. So we discussed just like a wide array of issues that impact the Black community, and they meet with us on a weekly basis. And then a handful of them continued on through the summer to set up the social change project that will launch this upcoming summer. So what we found is when you give our students books that actually reflect their culture, that they can see themselves in and is relevant to them, our students are already inherently brilliant and they actually want to learn, but it's just more pertinent to them, or it feels just more urgent when it's about them. So they could actually see themselves and their families reflected in that book and relate to the experiences. And then we come back around and tie it into academics. So wildly successful with the students, super excited about trying to grow the program this year and beyond.
I feel like you're reading my mind because every time I get ready to ask you a question, you've already answered it. I'm like, is she reading my mind? What is going on here?
No, truth be told, I have extreme social anxiety, so I'm always like.
Well, you're hiding it well. You're doing great.
So is this program, is this extracurricular or is it during school time?
No, actually they're with us after school. So they stay with us for 90 minutes after school. We were doing it on a Friday afternoon. So you can imagine what it's like to see high school students give up a Friday afternoon and evening. We went from 3:30 p.m. to 5 o'clock, students in the room together, Black students just talking about like these issues and learning. And then the biggest thing that I saw come out of this was a sense of community and how they started supporting each other and sharing their own experiences with like racial injustice and social injustice, and seeing them really like coalesce around these issues and wanting to do something about it. And a lot of them really expressed that they came away with the ability to discuss racial issues in a way that they felt like they were informed, and in a way that that made them feel like they were like intellectual and knowledgeable around the subject. And so we saw a lot of students going on to actually speak to other students. And we had one symposium around the N-word, in which students got to guest to discuss like confronting the N-word and what is that like, and sharing their different perspectives, and wanting to even like speak to our CEO of our charter school system. And so they just really like got fired up about it. And for me as an educator, and also just as a Black woman, is just really excited to see our kids be able to speak intelligently about a text, think critically about it, and then also want to go out and be agents of change, because often the perspective is that our students don't want to read, they're not interested in intellectual pursuits. And what I found is that's not true. What it is that we're not presenting them with the opportunity to see themselves through their own cultural lens and have their own experiences reflected back at them, so that they can critically think about this and share and feel like they can be like decision makers and empowered to go out and do something about it. So that's what we're learning through this process. And I think it's also breaking down stereotypes about Black students, how we feel about reading, how we approach literacy in the classroom with our students, and that our students, like I said, like they're inherently brilliant. They have Black genius that is just born, like it's within us, and it's up to us as educators to understand how to unleash that. So that's what we're trying to do with this program.
Wow, you said a mouthful. We had a question come from one of the viewers. She wanted to know if this program is only at one school, or is this across a number of schools?
So last year we piloted in two schools with Aspire Public Schools. So we did 2 high schools there. This year we're looking to go citywide, like we're in Stockton. We're based out of Stockton, California, which is Northern California. But the idea is that we want to recreate Goldie Muhammad's book, Cultivating Genius. Like she speaks about this old, just kind of like almost like lost history in a sense of how after enslavement, we came into freedom and Black people were educating themselves and liberating themselves through literacy. And we basically want to recreate that for our youth today. So it's kind of like modernizing that concept. And the goal is that we'll be able to create literary academies for our students across the nation. So right now I'm trying to scale up citywide, and I'm in this state of California, but we're looking at how to scale it. And then also we're grassroots. So funding is always,
Right.
it's always, let's just call it, it's always funding. But we do have interest, and we're encouraging anybody that wants to support the program, even by like volunteering or trying to set up what we call lit crews. So the idea is that we would, like how they had academies, we would create what we call lit crews. And so,
Oh, I thought you meant a cruise.
Maybe
wonderful things can happen on the ocean.
I know how to ball on the budget, but that's some serious balling on the budget.
Hey, you never know. Speak it and it will come.
So that's where we are now. We're planning to launch across multiple schools, and just looking for ways to like scale it up across the nation. So anybody that has any ideas on how to support with that, then more than welcome to come partner with us.
How many students are you working with now?
So we're about to start again. Last year, we piloted with 22 in the core group, and I think we reached around maybe 30 to 40. And then this year, we're actually set to launch across all of Aspire Public Schools, 9 through 12. So Aspire is the largest public charter school system in California. And so we're gonna launch across 9 through 12 at all of their schools. So the goal is, it's like we'd probably be looking at anywhere from hopefully 100 to 150. We're trying to scale up slowly just for capacity. Like I said, we're still working on trying to get fully funded so we can maximize our capacity and be sustainable for some more years to come.
Well, it sounds like something that, all these different foundations that give grants, and the thing about getting grants, you have to do, you have to search and find, then you have to apply, and it's a process. But I'm sure that there's some funds out there for what you all are doing. And
Yeah,
it's just a
sure.
matter of making the connections to make it happen.
Right.
So maybe somebody watching this show might even kick in. You never know.
Absolutely.
You never know.
Yeah, we're looking at definitely grant funding, foundations. Like I said, my nonprofit is very new. We're grassroots right now. We've gotten a lot of work done. Our first year, we did all of this with Black is Lit and everything without having any funding our first year.
Yeah, doing it with passion.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we did
Mhm.
get, we have had a little bit of funding coming in this year. So that's why we hope that we can kind of ramp it up. And Aspire Public Schools has been great at wanting to partner with us and bring it into their schools. So the hope is that we'll be able to expand out to other school districts as well.
Nice, nice, nice. So I'm just wondering, because I'm picturing you pitching this program to these kids and they're saying, you taking us staff to school so we can read. So I'm just wondering how that experience was.
To be honest, yes, it was like, I'm not gonna lie, there was like us looking at each other like, okay, how are we gonna pitch this? And for me, the school that we piloted at, one of the schools last year was actually Aspire Langston Hughes Academy out in Stockton, and I used to teach at that school. So I did have a little social capital there. There was still a good group of kids that I used to actually facilitate the Black Student Union there and did a lot of Black student programming. So I still had some social capital that I was able to lean on. There's still enough kids there where I'm like, hey, you want to come do this? And they're like, Miss Herndon, like, what the heck? Like, what is this? What the heck are you like looking at this now? And it's just like, look, Friday, 3:30, be there. And so at first it was kind of like, okay, all right. And so we and of course you have your kids that just want to read. So I already had a handful that love to read. But what we did was really, what I found the hook was the social change project. And that's where they really, really were like, yes, like, oh, we're not gonna just read, we're actually gonna do something. So I heard that comment like multiple times where it's like, yeah, we're not just getting together to read, we're gonna get it together, we're gonna read, and you're gonna go out and you're gonna do something. The other thing is that it wasn't just about like, it's not just a book club. So they actually had a hashtag for it. So that they started going, Black is Lit, hashtag, not a book club. So understood, like, hey, I'm getting a benefit. I'm getting literacy skills. I'm working on my writing. I'm doing critical thinking. I'm getting to get together with kids that look like me, that have similar experiences to myself. And we're getting to share about us, and our culture is actually at the center of it. And so after a couple of times, it was really neat to see how just like excited they got about just even sharing with each other, and kids actually reading ahead. And they were like moving ahead of us and just being fired up about like getting texts from kids and being like, hey, Miss Herndon, this just happened in the book. I can't believe, like, and they had different teams, like I'm team Quentin, I'm team, like, so it really is something that they really started to lead, and it took on like for themselves because they understood that they owned that program.
I was just gonna say that kids feel like they can take ownership when they start to have fun with it and they care about it. They take ownership of it and they want it to be the best. And even I'm sure they even competed with each other. I read 2 chapters last night. Well, I read 3 chapters last night.
We got to have the shade.
Right. Gotta have that. Now, somebody asked to repeat the name of the program. So it's Black is Lit, L-I-T, like short for literature, or lit as in, awesome or whatever.
So got it.
And she wanted to know how we can contact you and your program.
Yes. On my website right now, www.nzinga.org, which I don't know if they can see it, but NZINGA, the name.
I'll put it in the chat for you.
Thank you. So www.nzinga.org, and then you could contact me directly by my first initial T, last name HERNDON @nzinga.org. Yeah, definitely like reach out to me. That's my direct email. You can also contact us through the website. But yeah, Black is Lit. The kids actually got lit about just the name of it. So when I said Black
Okay.
is Lit, they were like, "Oh, Miss Herndon, we about to get lit. Like, what's that?" And then they figured out that I meant literature, and it was
Yeah.
But they were like, oh,
They
well,
were
that's
like,
cool too.
yeah, I had a
Yeah,
cool.
whatever works. So that's, to motivate them. Now I have a question. I was at a book event, was an author event Saturday. It was me and 4 other authors. We occasionally go to different malls with our books. And one of the customers that stopped, that I was talking to, said she had teenagers at home and she can't get them to put their devices down long enough to read anything. So what advice do you have for parents or teachers? Because the devices have captured a lot of the attention, and a lot of youth now required to be stimulated all the time. And that's like one side of the brain, and the other side of the brain isn't being activated and energized and utilized. And so how have you been able to address that?
So I was teaching, so and I
Yeah.
was history. So they're like, we can look up anything you're gonna tell us. But no, what I explain is like what you're not gonna be able to look up, what I call Dr. Google. I'm like, Dr. Google can't tell you like how to put these facts together like critically, right? They can't give you your own personal lens. So I think for parents, what becomes difficult is like we do have to compete with the devices, but also how do you get them to use the devices for like academic use? So how do we intersect the two? So that's what I was looking at, like even in my classroom. The other thing that I found of value, even as a teacher, especially being a teacher of color, teaching students of color, is the concept of education as empowerment, because a lot of times they're in classrooms and the material is not culturally responsive and things like that. So you really have to like see like, man, it's almost like a trick, and that sounds bad, but basically reverse psychology is what I was doing a lot in my class even. And so we're going to look up things, and maybe they're looking up things on their device, right? Because I'm not going to fight that battle. That's not the biggest battle. It's how are you using your device?
Right.
So if I can encourage you to like, hey, right now, we're going to look up this on your device. But the main thing is that our kids want to be leaders, and they want to be in charge, and they want to be empowered. So how do we reposition education and literacy in our community to let them understand that this is how you are empowered? This is how we as a people seek liberation, and you're actually building the capacity to be able to make change and to be in charge of your own future. The other thing is that I really do go back to the origins of greatness of our community, because we don't share about that enough. Even as adults, a lot of us don't recognize that we had African-American literary societies. We've become disconnected what education means in our community. So it's really about like students thinking about education as being a point of empowerment, and not something that is like done to them, but something that is for them. And so you really have to kind of repackage and reimagine how we're approaching education as a community. And what I found is when I'm bringing in like relevant pieces from hip hop or just pop culture, and we're flipping that academically, then that's where they see themselves like in the classroom, and they understand that what we're learning right now actually matters for them today and for the future. And once again, speaking on it, school to prison pipeline is real. And there is a connection between literacy rates and imprisonment. So
And it doesn't have to be. I mean, I think often we find out that something is a truth, and then we treat it as if it's a constant that we can't do anything about. And we can absolutely do something about the school to prison pipeline. And you're doing your part in that.
yeah, and and that's the part of I've learned like the devices unfortunately are here to
Here to
stay.
stay.
But how do I make it part of the learning experience? How do I teach you how to be responsible digitally and think for yourself? So a lot of times I'm just even challenging them. Okay, you're looking at this, hashtag that, whatever, you hitting them on the DM, whatever it is. I make jokes about it all the time with them. But how do I make sure that they understand that they need to think critically about all the information that's being thrown at them on a daily basis, and how to go out and be intellectually curious, right? So I joke with them about that all the time. I was like, hey, I bet if I told you right now to go research what Cardi B had for lunch today, I bet you could find that for me in like 5.5 seconds flat, right? So we need to be just as fired up about our academics as we do about like what's going on like in the latest rap song or hip hop, but we need to integrate the two so there's not this hierarchical dissonance between like the academic side and my cultural side. So I do lean into the concept that Dr. Christopher Inman talks about, being ratchetdemic. So how can I both be ratchet and my cultural authentic self? I can bring my ratchetness into the classroom and be who I am, right? But I also can keep it academic. So I love when he speaks about being ratchetdemic, and that's something that I'm encouraging in the classroom. But unfortunately, our students aren't usually encouraged, or they don't feel like it's welcome for them to bring their full authentic selves into the classroom. So it's uncomfortable.
And we have to stop making that seem like such a sin. And I think right now, even with videos or with videos, like for instance, with my TikTok videos, I give writing tips. I'm going to meet people where they are. But then there's also this awesome thing called Wattpad that kids are reading now. That's where they're getting a lot of their reading material from. So we can't fight against it. We just have to learn to work with it.
Got to work with it. And like you said, meet them where they're at, but also show them whatever knowledge they walk into the classroom with or any academic space has value.
Yes.
And it's like you are seen and heard, and what you're coming in with is good enough. And we're going to build on that. And that's really what this program is centered on, is culturally responsive learning environments so that our students feel comfortable enough and safe enough to learn, and safe enough, again, to be their ratchetdemic selves, because you are welcome to be ratchetdemic here, so you can be both ratchet and academic. You don't have to choose, right? Like, I shouldn't have to choose between my culture and my academics. And that's what we ask our students to do every day when they enter the classroom. And this is what I believe, like, we're breaking down those barriers with this program by even having it called Black is Lit. I mean, they get excited just from hearing like, whoa, this is a reading program and it's called Black is Lit. Yeah, for sure, because it's for you. So,
well, like, it's also, it lets them know you can use words.
Right.
You can make a word positive. You can make it have more than one meaning. You can create your own label by using the words, but you have to know what words are that you can combine to do what you want. Now, the thing I say about Dr. Google is, in order to get a certain answer, you have to ask the right question. And if you don't know what questions to ask, you won't get the correct answer, or you get a partial answer, or you get an answer that's not contextually correct. Absolutely. So that's where having broad knowledge comes in. That's why reading is so important, because it doesn't give you facts. You get to read something in a broader context.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And that's the empowerment piece, right? Is I tell them about being a history teacher, like, hey, you could go look it up, but it's not, I don't want you reciting and regurgitating things. I want to know what you think, and the learning is in the reflection of it. And also, how are you critically thinking to put like all of this information together, because the value is coming from you in your mind and how you're processing the information. And that's why I'm like, hey, if it's a rap song, something your brother said to you last night, something your teacher said in 6th grade, you bring it in, because it's all valuable here. You don't have to disconnect, your experience when you come into the learning environment. That's the center of it. And I just can't express enough that Black children are inherently brilliant. We are brilliant people. And the Zinga, like we're talking about cultivating and unleashing Black genius. There's nothing wrong with our kids. The problem is our education system. And that is the way we teach and the way we ask them to respond to that teaching. That is the issue. And we notice when we put our students in culturally responsive learning environments, they thrive. And that's what our goal is to have more of that occur across the nation and just let this Black genius thrive.
Well, thank you so much. We're at the end of our interview time, but it's been very, very enlightening. And we want to support the Black is Lit program however we can. So those of you who asked about being in touch with Tiffany, make sure you reach out to her and see what she needs. If you can help, please do so. And continued success with what you're doing. I hope it grows and expands and you can reach thousands of students with the Black is Lit program.
Thank you so much for your time. It was great being here.
It was great having you. Thank you so much. And I will stay connected.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, have a great evening. And we're moving along to our next interview. Somebody had a question. Let me see.
I think that was Boyah.
No, Lydia wanted to know the names of the books. So she said she was late.
Oh.
And these are the two books we had. No Stone Unturned by Brandon Massey. The question was about his daughter's name, which was Destiny, and Stephanie Burnham won the book. Then the other book was Memphis by Tara Stringfellow. It was about the name of the author's dog, and the name was Huckleberry, and the book was won by Tony Benita. Both of them are regular viewers of the show and frequent winners of books. So our next guest is, and we try to, as much as we can, have bookstores on the show because we need our bookstores to succeed. And so we want to make sure that when one opens or one expands, or just when we hear about one, we want to bring the proprietor onto the show so you all can learn about what they offer and you all can support them. And by support, I mean go to their store or go to their website and make a purchase. That's what support means, spending dollars. So tonight we have Yaya Whaley-Williams, and she is the owner of Sadie's Books and Beverages in Middletown, New York. So welcome, Yaya, to Black Authors Matter TV.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you, Gwen and Rhonda. Very excited. I've been listening in, and it's so serendipitous to be able to, follow Boyah and the Black is Lit founder and CEO, because it feels like what we're doing here at Sadie's here on the East Coast is like a perfect synergy and blending of what they both described about their books and their programs.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
Beautiful.
great.
I mean, this has been a good night. I wish I had gotten to hear more of Boyah's story, but just a little bit I heard was great. And then following it up with this wonderful program, and then now we're coming to you, who's academic excellence. I mean, I think this is a great night.
So shout out to Gwen for the lineup, and I'm just humbled and excited to be here to talk about our new budding bookstore that's also a cozy cultural community hub and resource here in Middletown, New York.
Okay, now for those who are not familiar with New York State, where is it in Middletown in upstate New York, or is it right outside of New York City? Exactly where it is in the state?
Yes, as well. I let the record show I'm city folk. I'm originally from Brooklyn and Harlem. And so I've recently moved upstate, right? Not all the way like near Buffalo, but we're right outside. Most people are familiar with Woodbury Commons, which is a popular shopping area. And we're about 30 minutes north of there. So we're about right in the middle between the city folk and all the way up in the boonies, which they call like Plattsburgh/Buffalo, which is almost Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, Buffalo is almost Canada.
Yeah, I haven't been in New York State past New York City. I've been to some of the other states above New York, but I've been to New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
Well, you have to
think
check
that's
us out. And as a small plug about the growing demographics of Middletown, New York, especially post-pandemic, we've had an influx of migrants from the city that are moving up to this area. So, I mean, Newburgh is technically considered the 6th borough. So we might be the 7th borough at some point here in Middletown, New York. And so please check us out. It's about a 60-minute drive right outside the city.
Okay. So tell us about your background and how it positioned you to open your bookstore, Sadie's, and who's Sadie?
Okay, great. Thank you. So I, similarly to our last guest, Nzinga, I believe her name is, I started my professional career in the teaching field. I was a math teacher in the heart of Brooklyn at Benjamin Banneker for about 7 years. And, you know, through very strong mentorship and some organic just progression and growth in the field, I became an assistant principal and then a principal and then a director of math and then a coordinator of math. And, you know, much like Boyah said about how George Floyd and what happened was one of the pinnacles that inspired him to write his memoir, it really was, that was a pinnacle for my husband and I to start a community organization called Because It Matters 24/7. And the goal of that organization was really to inspire and strengthen community ties through service, celebrations, and roundtable discussions. And one of the hiccups we hit in the past year, because it was founded in 2020, whenever we wanted to do these community events or roundtables, it's like, okay, but where do we host it, right? And we found ourselves having to reach out and collaborate with other local business owners and make connections that afforded us the chance to have a physical space. We are blessed enough in this past year to come across a really cozy spot right here on North Street in downtown Middletown. And it's become almost the home base for Because It Matters 24/7. And so how did Sadie's get birthed out of that? Similarly to what we heard from Black is Lit, coming from the education field, knowing that knowledge is power and the importance of literacy and reading, disrupting the school to prison pipeline, and also just inspiring young people to, you know, physically open a book was part of what we wanted to do in opening this space. And so our slogan here at Sadie's is we're more than a bookstore, because the books are kind of the backdrop to what we hope is really a cultural experience and a vibe that honors intergenerational dynamics. And so Sadie's is named after my Jamaican grandmother, who had a huge love and passion, not just for service, but for books. And so whenever someone visits here for the first time and I give them an intimate tour, I say to them that this is not about remembering facts about my family history. It's to inspire you to stay connected to elders in your family. Culturally, a lot of our heirlooms and traditions are passed down orally. So get those stories.
Yes.
Hold on to that 1960s Polaroid camera or your great-great-aunt's typewriter, because all of those things have value and have meaning. And we strategically have them scattered throughout bookcases here in the store to inspire conversations with young people.
So you had a pretty, and I don't want to say lofty, but you knew where you wanted to go when you opened this store. You knew the goals that you had for it. But when I was looking at the notes, I noticed that you're the first Black-owned bookstore in that area. So did you have an initial fear about whether this type of store would be accepted in this community?
Absolutely. And thank you for that question, because a large part of what this journey has been since opening on July 16th has been, you know, the affirmation from the young people that come to the space. Again, leaning on my education background. In Middletown, 90% of the youth in pre-K through 12 are Black and brown. But like in many other cities, 90% of the teachers and administrators are Caucasian or non-melanated, right? And so how do we leverage the difference between a lived experience and a graduate school teacher prep program? And books are one way to center a conversation around that. And so when we opened, the goal was to be one of those safe spaces where young people could go get the books that might be quote unquote banned from their curriculums. And shout out to Banned Book Week, which ended yesterday, sorry, 24th. But here at Sadie's, banned books are required reading, right? So we have Baldwin all over the place. We have Beloved, The Hate You Give. We have If Mango Street Could Talk. We have all of the books that might be shied away from in the traditional New York State curriculum are the grounding force for the experience we want young people to have. And so like with any business, you might have 2/3 that love it, 1/3 that can't stand it and hate it. And so we have been experiencing a little bit of that 1/3 dissent for what we're hoping is the longevity of Sadie's here, but we're more affirmed and inspired and encouraged by the young people that come in here and they just sit with books and they meet with friends and they're talking about literature, or they're participating in our open mic, or they're coming to our youth paint parties where they're learning about Basquiat and Jacob Lawrence and Alma Thomas. And so everything is a conduit to educate our young people, to empower them about the beauty that they are. And then if we can sprinkle in a little book at the end and say, if you want to know more, read this book. That's what Sadie's is. We're more than a bookstore.
Absolutely. So have you connected with many of the schools in the area to maybe have visits, or where the schools are visiting you all, or do you get to visit some of the schools? Just have that connection.
And that's one of the goals that we have in the upcoming months. Again, we're about 47 days old, so we're fresh out the gates in the entrepreneur.
Very new. Okay.
July 16th. And so we really want to do a lot, because part of our slogan as an organization is community as a verb, right? You learn it in school as a noun, but it's about what you do. And so boots on the ground, we're hoping to leverage those relationships. We've had several organizations host their meetings here and rent the space. There have been people that have rented this, looking to rent the space to hold cultural birthday parties. And we're hoping that it expands to school districts and, they bring their classes here to have those conversations. One, so that the teachers themselves can be immersed in growing their shelf awareness, right, and consciousness, but also take the burden off of having to fake through speaking through some hard topics or acting like the expert, so to say, around genres.
I like that, acting like the experts. And sometimes we don't have to wear that mask, but sometimes we choose to wear that mask.
Yeah, and that's part of the empowerment too, is like empowering young people, not just to think critically, but to challenge the teacher. But the teacher has to be able to release some of their own ego and allow themselves to be taught. And especially when we're talking about reading Black literature by Black authors that probably they didn't experience when they were in school or their grad school program, right? So it really is a communal effort to just grow consciousness by way of a bookstore.
Okay, for those out there who may be thinking about opening a bookstore in their area, what are some of the challenges that you experienced and some of the joys? I had a bookstore for 10 years, so I
might have to pick privately after this.
What did you say?
I might have to pick your brain privately after this.
Oh, okay. Well, this is what I tell people. You have to bring money down to the bottom line. That's any business. So a bookstore, it could be a bookstore, it could be a shoe store, it could be a consulting firm. You have to bring money down to the bottom line, meaning you have to take in more than you spend. And that's what trips up most small businesses. And that's why a good number fail after the first 5 years, because you have to make a profit. And a lot of times when you go into a business, you may not see it. You want to maybe offer a service, do something different or whatever, but you have to bring something down to the bottom line consistently.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can't stay around. And so staying around should be a goal. But just tell us some of your challenge. beverages that you do?
Yes, well, longevity is certainly what we're hoping and praying for, but I couldn't have said it better myself. Funding right now is one of our biggest challenges. Right now, we're completely self-funded. We're in the process of obtaining a 501c3, which
Okay.
would open the floodgates for grants. And you know, when you think about going into business, if passion is not what's pushing you to start that venture, right? For some people, it's being lucrative. But I'll tell you this, opening a bookstore, don't look to get lucrative because that's not what it's about, right? And so we're trying to also inspire not just a love of reading in the traditional sense, but what we offer in the store are audiobooks, right? Dispelling the myth that being a reader means you have to physically hold a book. Maybe you want to listen to a book, but again, books cost money. And so one of the things that you'll see when you come into Sadie's, where I am now in this intimate space, is to start off, we have 22 genres. All of our genres are named as hashtags to appeal to the youth. And our selections right now are very modest and intentional, mostly because we want to get that data to see what genres the community is, you know, gravitating towards before we populate shelves and shelves of books. And the reason why I say all of that is because you asked what the challenges are, and it certainly is the funding. You know, you don't make profit off of book sales. Most of your profit in a bookstore comes from your sideline items, like your merchandise, your pins, your stationaries, renting the space for book events, doing pop-up shops, offering programs, collaborating with other organizations. And so that has been the biggest challenge. But ironically, it has also been the biggest joy. What I've seen happen by way of Sadie's being on the map now for almost 2 months is, you know, a lot of other small and home-based businesses, Black-owned, coming out to Sadie's, wanting to participate in pop-ups, looking to put their product in the store, looking to lead workshops for the community if they're a Black realtor on first-time home ownership and buying, if they have a passion for crocheting and they crochet bags, doing a crochet circle for the elders, if they make pour paints and candles and skincare products for their 9 to 5, leading workshops like that for the community. And so it's been really encouraging and fun to see, almost like magic, all of these small Black-owned businesses popping up in Middletown. And that's why we say we're a cultural hub, because we don't just push Sadie's here. In every bag purchase, we throw in local Black-owned bakers, realtors, bankers, estheticians, you name it. If it's in the local area and they've been to Sadie's, their business card is here.
Well, forgive me if you said it already and I may have missed it, but have you had authors contact you about maybe doing book signings at your store?
Absolutely. I didn't mention it, but that's a great point. We actually, on September 3rd, similarly to what I was just mentioning, there were 5 visitors that came to Sadie's, and they were just coming to see the bookstore. And they very cavalierly, said, "Oh, and by the way, I wrote a book and it's published." And I said, "What?" And they all live right here in Middletown. So we hosted on September 3rd a back to school book party with those 5 children's book authors that lived right here. And so it was an opportunity to get young people excited about reading. We populate their books here right on our shelves. We have actually on October 14th, right behind me, one of our genres is called Food for Educators. Those are the books that your teacher prep program won't give you to read, but you should certainly read if you're serving Black and brown kids. And the last guest just mentioned 2 that are on our shelves, Gouldy Muhammad's Cultivating Genius and Chris Emden's Ratchademic. But we have also Jacinthe Joyce, who just published a book called 7 Steps for a Thriving Learning Community. She'll be doing a book signing here. And Boyah, I don't know if you're listening, but the plan is to connect with you and have you come do a book signing here at Sadie's for your memoir.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great.
And so
He's not that far from you.
Yeah, I don't think he's all that far.
Okay, amazing,
Because
amazing.
he's in Massachusetts, but you're in the northern part of New York. So
Yeah.
I would love that connection. So hopefully
Yeah.
he was on after his interview because he responded to something somebody said. Oh, there he is. Dear Yaya. He already said something to you.
Oh,
This is breaking news. He said, "I shall visit Sadie's Books and Beverages."
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you. And again, the goal is to amplify Black and Brown voices in every capacity, from the Baldwins to the Boyas, right? Have a huge love and affinity for Baldwin, but we also want to give current stories from local, tangible authors that our young people can touch and actually meet, because that adds another layer of access and another layer of authentic connection to text when we can actually meet the author. So I'm very excited at that collaboration. And thank you, Gwen and Rhonda and Black Authors Matters, for this opportunity.
And thank you for joining us and sharing your story. First of all, your bookstore sounds amazing. I love a good Black bookstore. If I see I cannot pass one without going inside and just being amongst the books and everything else that goes on in there. And they're often, just as you said, they wind up being community hubs because everybody meets there.
Yes.
So I think that it's valuable what you're doing in your city, because as you said, you're the first to do it. And there may have been people who thought about it and said, they're not going to want that here. And then you had the bravery to do it.
And they're not going to want, they may not want it. They need, right? And so just like right now, what we're seeing in education, there's this huge debacle over CRT, culturally responsive teaching. People may not want it, but there's a reason why there's a need for it. So we're really excited about it. The whole right side of the store is brick and mortar, bookcase style, but the whole left side of the store, that's where the cultural hub comes into play. We highlight and have enlarged famous photographs. We put up posters of exhibits to things like Basquiat's King Pleasure in the city, to encourage people to go out and access other local Black culture. And, you know, we also have things like my grandmother's hot comb, so that it's a leverage point to talking about the Crown Act, which now makes, you know, discriminating against natural hair illegal in 27 of our 51 states, right? So everything in this store has intention, it has purpose, it has history. And so the hope is when young or vintage, I don't call them old, when vintage elders come into this, there's something for every age group to tap
We like to say season.
Yes, seasons, yes. Seasoned and favored and elevated, that there's something for everyone. And even down to the artists. I have my grandmother's Nina Simone album up, because the Kanyes, the Jay-Z's, the Taylor Swifts, the Lizzos,
they all came from her.
What? The Ninas, the Thelonious Monks, the Marvin Gayes. So again, it's another opportunity to make those bridges and connections.
I'm going to give you one more tip from a longtime entrepreneur and a 10-year brick and mortar store owner. Because based on something that you said about bringing all these different people in to either have presentations or to present their products or house their products. Charge people. And I don't know if you are or not, but even if it's a small fee, even if it's nominal.
Yes.
Because they have to have some skin in the game. That's one. Two, you're paying rent or whatever, unless you own your building, you have overhead. That's two.
Yeah.
Okay. And three, you can't assume that the people that they might draw in are going to actually spend money. So you need to, the people who want to utilize your space that you are absorbing the overhead for, they need to pay, because they would have to pay something anywhere else. So even if it's nominal, and nominal can be, you know, that's a subjective term. It can be whatever you believe it is, but charge people for using your space. That's something we didn't do that I wish we had done when I had my brick and mortar store. Because I learned you can't assume the people that are coming there for meetings are going to buy something. A lot of times they'll come in for the meeting and then they'll leave and they won't even look at something to buy.
You bring all those people in hoping that they're going to buy something.
Right.
They'll look at a couple of books and say, oh, that's cute. And then they walk out.
So at least if they don't, at least you got something out of it. And maybe they'll come back later. But you know.
And thank you for that cautionary tale of advice. It almost feels like my Nana is talking through you, because one thing she did, her mother opened a restaurant in Harlem at one point, and that philanthropic spirit, right? We're givers as a people, but she gave away more food than she sold, and the restaurant closed within a year. And so we are not looking to have Sadie's close within a year. And so thank you for that affirmation that You know, although we want to be supportive and we want to be receptive and embrace the community, we need to charge folks.
Right, and people don't always understand that. We have this mentality in our community that we should give things to each other and that we shouldn't charge, and but we're not supposed to make money. We're just supposed to keep being philanthropic without getting anything in return and not expecting anything in return. And all that matters, well, all that happens is that, yeah, you become famous, you become well known, you become popular, but you become broke.
Hello.
And
well, a lot of times you don't even become popular, Rhonda. You just
and that's true too.
And you know, you can't help anybody.
Well, and I guess I mean you get
under.
popular with the users, the people who want to continue to use you and milk you.
Yes.
But the thing is, they're not understanding that the amount of energy and the amount of money it takes to do these things, you have to charge.
Yes.
Because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep going.
Yes.
One of my most favorite sayings is nothing is free.
Nothing is free. Not even
nothing
like
is
my
free.
grandma used to say.
And so if people want you there in the community, they should be willing to invest in your mutual success. You're helping them, they're helping you, and charge a fee. So
that's a good point. And I just want to share one other thing in terms of inclusivity of literature. We have full price books, but we also have something called $3 and $7 treasures, which are new and gently used books for those who may not be able to afford or have it in their budget. We have browsing baskets, which are a compilation of community donations. We have books in Haitian Creole and Spanish, since those are the two most dominant languages in the local area. And so we have entry and access point to literature. All we need you to do is come out to Sadie's and you'll find something in any one of those 3 lanes.
Well, I think it's great. I'm excited that we were able to have you on early on so people can know about you early, especially since we are approaching the 4th quarter. And the 4th quarter, for those of you who are not retailers, October, November, December, those are the months where retail stores make the most money. So, you know, have some holiday specials.
Yes.
That, you know, so make yourself a place for people to come to do their holiday shopping. And if people are like me, I really actually start my Christmas shopping in July. So I can be done before Thanksgiving. That's because I just hate the crowds and I hate the picked over merchandise. I hate not being able to get exactly what I want for the person I want it for. So I start in July. I get a little bit at a time. I'm about 2/3 done.
Well, I'm 0/3 done, but you ask me this time next year, I'll do a little better. Yeah, but yes, in terms of what you're saying, and we have the second Saturday, it's called, it's a pop-up second Saturday Sadie shopping experience. We have pop-up shops. Right now, we're doing a community raffle. I heard you ask the last guest, how do you get youth to read? So we have a Flicks and flat screen community raffle. Hashtag Flicks is one of our special genres here. It's all books that were made into film. And instead of just raffling off a TV, you win a set of 12 books that were made into film. So The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
I like that.
Yeah, Their Eyes Are Watching God with Zora Neale Hurston. I Am Not Your Nico by James Baldwin. You'll get all those books with the TV to encourage not just TV watching, but also book reading.
Wow.
Nice.
That's a nice prize.
Right?
I know, I need to get in on that.
Let's have virtual dollars here at Sadie's. So just say the word and send an email. I'll put your raffle ticket in and you can Venmo.
Okay.
Well, so we only have a couple of minutes left. It actually went faster than I thought it was going to go, as these interviews generally do. So we want people to be able to visit you either virtually, email you, on social media, or physically coming to your actual physical location. So how can people reach out to you on social media, and do you have a website?
Amazing. I was multitasking. I just dropped my website in the chat, becauseitmatters247.com. There
Okay.
you see what we do as a community organization and as a bookstore. We also have our Rock Your Gear shop where we have a Dinkra symbol mugs and Black message apparel that you can rock this fall since it's sweater weather right now. In terms of Instagram and Facebook, it's the business name, Sadie's Books and Beverages. Full name right there on Instagram and Facebook. We would love to be connected with more people across New York State and the country. If there's a book that you want to recommend that you feel should be on our shelves, we welcome that. We also welcome the community to contribute to the categorization. In 30 seconds or less, I'll give a quick little story. A community member came in and I had August Wilson's Fences under Flicks because
Nice.
it was, I mean, Denzel and Viola, they should have won something for that when they made that into a movie, right? And this community member came in and they said, no, that book needs to be under hashtag the GOATs because August Wilson is a GOAT. He's the greatest American playwright, I think, of all times. And so when the community member came in that passionate, I recategorized the book based off the conversation. And so nothing in this bookstore lives not in my mind or in my ego. If you feel passionate about a book title that should be available in the community and where it should fall as a genre, we welcome those recommendations and contributions.
Wonderful. And that's good that you listen to that community member.
Yes, yes. So it's a community space. And again, it sparks conversations about books. You can recommend titles, you can take a book, leave a book, buy a book. But yes, I'm definitely taking that pearl of wisdom to start charging. And the goal is that Sadie's is around for a long time.
My last piece of advice is listen to your customers, but be sure to balance it with business principles. Because sometimes you might have a customer coming in saying, you all should sell these books for $5. That, you can't do that from a business.
Keep the lights on. Yes.
So, but listening to our customers is why our business has been around as long as it has, and why we've been able to pivot each time there was a shift in the marketplace. So we listen to our customers. It's important, especially in these days when you can't even get anybody on the phone. It's just it's quite irritating to trying to actually get a human to talk to you about whatever it is when you call these businesses. So anyway, thank you so much, Yaya, for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV.
Yes, and Black bookstores matter too, because you can't.
You're right. And we wish you all the success. You have a booming. The next 12 months will be booming, and then beyond, you'll just be catapulted.
Blessings. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. You have a great night as well.
All right. And our last interview is imminent. Do you have any comments, Rhonda, before we bring on our last guest?
No, actually, I just need to go off camera for like 2 minutes and then I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. No problem. Okay. So we're going to bring on our final guest. And this guest has a book that came out a few months ago. Her name is Leslie Fenwick, and she is, I believe, a college professor. But I want her book really, when I read about the book coming out, I had made a notation that we wanted to have her on the show because her book is about a topic that I've heard about from teachers for many years, and I never knew somebody actually put the information in a book. So the name of her book is Jim Crow's Pink Slip: The Untold Story of Black Principal and Teacher Leadership. So we welcome Leslie Fenwick to Black Authors Matter TV. Uh-oh, we need to unmute so we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, there you go.
Thank you, Gwen. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Okay, well, first tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to do some research on this topic or to expand on the research or anecdotal evidence you already had to decide to put this in a book.
I'm a lifelong educator. I've spent my career in K-12 education and also in higher education. My current title is Dean Emerita of the Howard University School of Education, where I'm also a professor of education policy. And some of your viewers may recognize my name. In 2020, I was one of 2 fully vetted finalists for the U.S. Secretary of Education position. So I've been a lifelong educator.
Okay. Can you turn the volume up a little bit on your computer device or whatever you have? Because your voice level is a little low, and I want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah, if you could, can you turn up a little bit more? Are you able to
Sure.
increase the volume on it?
How's this volume?
It's really about the same. It could be just be on my end. It's hard to tell, but I want to make sure everybody can hear everything that you said. I know you said you were a finalist for the Department of Secretary of Education. Is that what you said?
Yes, I said I'm a lifelong educator. I began my career as a 4th grade teacher. I taught and was a school administrator in K-12 schools. And since 1993, I've been in higher education, and my current title is Dean Emerita of the Howard University School of Education, where I'm a professor of education policy.
Okay. And what led you to look at you said it's the untold story of how 100,000 exceptionally credentialed and effective Black principals and teachers were purged from U.S. public schools after the Brown versus Board decision and the integration. And I know I heard this from several people I know who were teaching at the time, that they moved the best Black teachers to the white schools, and then the Black schools basically didn't have the best teachers. They intentionally, or some of them they forced into early retirement. So tell us what you learned in your research.
So the story comes from 2 places. One, I grew up in a home where both of my parents and both sets of grandparents on my mother and my father's side attended all Black segregated schools, and so did all of their friends. And so growing up, I would hear stories from my parents, my grandparents, and their friends about their teachers. And in my head, I always said they kind of played a poker of sorts when they would talk about their teachers and their teachers' credentials. Well, my teacher went to Atlanta University and also earned a master's degree in French from the Sorbonne. Well, my teacher had graduated from Clark College and earned a master's degree from Columbia University. So my parents and their friends really took great pride in the individuals who were their teachers and principals. And I always noticed that they remembered all of those men and women's names, and they remembered their academic credentials. Okay, so this is part of my socialization in my home growing up. The second thing that triggered the book was during my doctoral studies, I was really excited about taking a class called The Politics of Education. And I get in the class and I'm all ready to have this discussion about the Brown decision. And the professor does something that's very disheartening to me. It actually makes me angry as a student. He says that we're not going to discuss the Brown decision in this class. Instead, we're going to start out with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg decision, which was a 1971 racial desegregation decision. And after he says that, and I'm feeling defeated and angry, like the politics of ed is Brown. How could I be in a PhD course called The Politics of Education, not discussing Brown? The second thing the professor did is he put up, now some of your viewers may be too young to remember this, maybe you're too young to remember this, but a transparency. Do you remember transparencies? You know, you put them up.
The overhead projector.
The overhead projector,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, okay. And he put this up and he has this list of negative statistics about Blacks, kind of talking about academic underachievement of Black children and just the Black population overall. And his intention, I believe, was to show disparities, but without a framing or any history given to these statistics, it really led just like a litany of pathology and negativity. So I left the class angry and marched over to the library, determined to do two things: to bring back some positive statistics to inform this faculty member, and also to bring back some information about the Brown decision. And I was going to give it to the professor to shape the class. This was my intention. So I'm over in the stacks. You know, now students, they just go on a computer and they're in the library. Back in the day, we actually had to go to the library, and we'd be in something called the stacks with all the books and everything. And a series of US Senate hearings about the displacement of Black principals and those hearings were held in 1971, almost fell off the shelf as I'm looking for other material. And I sat in the stacks and I started reading them. So the combination of what I was hearing at home about the exceptional teachers and principals that inhabited all Black segregated schools, and then what I read in the Senate hearings kind of conspired to create this book. And you're right, the story, the untold part of the story is that 100,000 Black teachers and principals were purged from school systems in 17 dual system states, those 17 states operating segregated school systems from Delaware down to Florida, through Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas, etc. We lost 100,000 Black principals and teachers in those 17 states, and they were replaced, and here's the untold, there are two parts of the untold story, and they were replaced on a near one-to-one basis by whites who were lesser credentialed than them. And no one talks about that piece. And so that's where the story begins.
Yeah, I tell people that the people that were born after a certain year, where the schools were supposedly improved through integration, missed out on the community cohesiveness and exceptionalism from the teachers who taught Black children at the time. That's sort of what you were talking about. It's something that they can't even imagine, because all of that was purged once the schools were improved through integration. And so the history of that is only a memory for the people who experienced it, but it really is something that you can't even relate to children today or young people today, because they can't imagine it. They can't imagine. I had a teacher who, and part of my education the best part of my education was the part when I was young and the schools were segregated. I shouldn't hate to say that. It's a fact.
Well, it is a fact.
I had a teacher who, she was so committed. She didn't rely on the textbooks. We had textbooks, but she didn't use just the textbooks to teach us. In the time that she was like 50 when she was teaching me in elementary school, but she had been around the world with this International Reading Association. She had literally gone around the world. I mean, back then that was uncommon for Black people, but she didn't go on a pleasure trip. She brought all of that back with her, and she was showing us slides from France and Holland and Spain and all the places she went. She was teaching us words from those languages. It was just something that it's hard to even describe. The jewels, they were like angels. They weren't really like teachers. They were really angels. They were saints. They really were committed. And it was just fabulous. And, later it was okay I still had Black teachers, but the system had changed. And when I was young, the teachers had total control over the class. They could do whatever they, and they really, I don't think they had any constraints other than were they teaching us, and I guess test scores, but everybody learned, and not everybody was at the same level. But the teachers were committed, and they had total control over the class. And the parents were committed too.
Yeah, you said something very interesting, and we've been taught really some falsehoods about Brown, the Brown decision. Brown did not mean close all the Black schools, fire, demote, and dismiss the Black principals and teachers, and push Black students into previously segregated all-white schools. Those previously segregated all-white schools had the segregationists hold on them in terms of names of those schools, the culture, the curriculum material, and yet that's what happened. And so what we lost, while I never heard my parents or my grandparents idolize segregationist policies, and we're not for segregationist policy.
No. Right.
What the concern is that we lost these models of intellectual authority.
Right.
So all children benefit from diverse models of intellectual authority because they learn that to be creative, to have knowledge, subject area expertise, to be interested in learning is not the purview of just one group of people. It belongs to all people. So when Black students were pushed into previously segregated all-white schools, those were hostile environments to them, okay? We know that from the recording of history. And I talk about some of that in the book. I go into some detail about that. So they lost models of intellectual authority, their teachers. Black students lost models of leadership authority, their principals. And one of the things I'm attempting to do in the book is to trace this decimation of the Black educator pipeline to the underrepresentation of Blacks in education today. So there are like 3.2 million teachers in the country, and about 7% are Black. There are about 93,000 principals in the country, and about 11% are Black. And they're less than 3% of the nation's nearly 14,000 superintendents are Black. And there's a history to this underrepresentation that we don't talk about, that I unpack in the book. And here's the kicker. Then, as now, Black educators are the nation's most credentialed educators.
Right.
More likely to have a master's and doctoral degree than their white or Asian or Latinx peers. And yet we're underrepresented in the serious policy and budget and curriculum implementation positions.
No, you are so right, and I'm loving what you're saying, because I actually see the lack of teachers of color. I see it in as a twofold problem. One is every time a young African American says that he or she wants to be an educator, that they want to be a teacher, 1 million people try to talk them out of it and tell them to do something else. And so what we're doing is we're taking good teachers out of the school, out of the schools. And I think many of us, when we think back on the teacher who impacted us most, it's often an African American teacher. So I think that's a big part of it. And the other part of it is just what you were talking about, was with desegregation. When desegregation happened, instead of the way we used to galvanize around our communities before desegregation, we stopped doing it after, because now we were like, okay, we're free. We can go see all those great things that the white teachers or the white schools have. And then we wound up forgetting about our own communities, our own schools. And we did it with our businesses, we did it with our schools, we did it with our neighborhoods, because all of a sudden, we were able to access what we thought was the better side, the greener side. And it's sad. It's kind of sad how we're just starting to galvanize around our communities again.
And you know, Rhonda, a lot of this history, if individuals didn't live it, it hasn't been taught. So there was a lot of fight in the Black educational community and the community writ large to make sure that integrated schools were truly integrated. Remember, the legal decisions subsequent to Brown said that schools would not be integrated wholly unless they were integrated in this way: faculty, staff, meaning principals, coaches, et cetera, and students. And yet in the book, I trace the exact day, I think it's like June 15th, 1971, where the nation's attention turned away from all the lawsuits, employment discrimination suits that said, you are avoiding the law of the land by firing, demoting, and dismissing Black educators. You have not achieved the integration of schools. And you've just turned your attention to having some kind of matching ratios or of Black and white students. So we've not achieved Brown, because Brown never said, just focus on racial ratios of students. Brown said, and the subsequent decision said, integrate wholly faculty, staff, students. And so students were left in, you know, these deserts, as I said, without these models of intellectual and leadership authority. The other piece of that we still see right now today is, and you know, I'm a former elementary and middle school teacher from back in the 80s, okay? So I've been at this for a while, since 83, okay, continuously. And one of the things that we see is that the curricular materials, curricular and instructional materials are almost exclusively white in terms of authorship, imagery, content, and delivery. So over 88% of our teaching force is white. When you look at it, pick up any textbook in any subject, authorship, imagery, content is white.
And the sad part is when the student wants to study something Black, they're accused of being militant or going against the grain. Not that they just want to learn more about their history.
And so Black students, we were all Black children. We're no different than any other children. We want to go to school and see ourselves represented in curriculum materials. And there's a way to do that. You know, if we can, as a nation, create smart cars and craft a path to Mars, we certainly can create curricular materials that are more reflective of the student body, which is becoming more and more diverse day by day.
We could, you know, something that surprises me, and I can't remember when somebody asked a question on Facebook one time. This is maybe a year or two ago, but they asked, when did you first have a Black teacher? This is my Facebook, most of my Facebook friends are Black. And people were saying not until 9th grade or 10th grade. I was like, that's sad. I had Black teachers my whole life until, see, I would have to remember when I had my first white teacher. You know, it's,
well,
so, I mean,
like almost 40% of the nation's schools have no teacher of color.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm like, wow, this is where we are. This is
well, I'm proud to say that my daughter is an educator and she's working on her master's in education. So I'm very happy for her.
Yeah, I mean, this is you need teachers that look like you some of the time. They don't all have to look like you. But I know when I went to college, my first Black professor, because I went to Georgetown. You're at Howard. I went to Georgetown. My first Black professor was the summer before my junior year, because I changed majors, so I had to go to summer school and take accounting to switch from the nursing school, which was not for me. It was to business school. And I was so excited when that Black man walked in to the room. I aced his class, and I think I was just so excited that I finally had a Black professor. That was the only one I had the entire time I was at Georgetown. But his name was Baron Harvey. And
Oh my
I think,
goodness.
do you know him?
Dean Harvey was Dean of the School of Business during my tenure as Dean of the School of Education. I know Dr. Harvey quite well.
That is
he's a
beautiful.
Wow.
It's a small world. You better
It
act
is
like
a
it's
small
very
world.
small world.
He was just getting started when he taught me. He was like 28 years old and just got his PhD. So, not only was he Black, he was young. This tall, handsome, young Black man is standing in front of the class. I was so excited. And I mean, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference. And it really changed my whole trajectory. I just think, just that feeling connected to something, because in that environment where it's not a welcoming environment for Black people. I don't know how it is now, but it sure wasn't when I was there. But I did take a course at Howard, and we used to always go to Howard to party because there weren't enough Black people at Georgetown to have a decent party. So anyway, I have so much hope for the next generation, but it all really starts, well, after family. It starts with education, because if you don't get a good education, you're going to be behind the 8 ball.
Well,
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And I just really hope that we need some revolutionary concepts, because doing it the same old way is not going to change anything. You can't keep doing things the same way and expect a different outcome.
Mhm.
So the information that you have, Dr. Fenwick, what do you want people to gain the most from reading Jim Crow's Pink Slip?
I want them to gain 3 things at least. One is to stop repeating the myth that with Brown, Blacks fled education to pursue other careers. This is one myth you see repeated in the research literature and oftentimes spoken, that, oh, Brown ushered in a new era for Blacks, and Blacks fled the education professions to pursue other careers that they had previously been blocked from. That's not the historical record, and nor do U.S. Department of Labor statistics support that myth. That's a myth. The historical record shows that the Black educator pipeline after Brown was purposely decimated by superintendents, school boards, local citizens, governors, state legislatures, not one legislator, but legislatures, through massive resistance to the Brown decision. So that's the first thing I want folks to know. The second thing I want them to know is that this loss of 100,000 Black educators who were more credentialed on a one-to-one basis compared to their white peers was not just a loss to the Black community. The transfer of those jobs resulted in about $1 billion in the transfer of income from the Black community to the white community. That would be 2.2 billion in today's money. And you might say to yourself, well, how did these Black educators become more credentialed than their white peers? Remember, in the 17 dual system states, Blacks couldn't attend elementary schools, high schools, colleges and universities, or graduate schools that were public, because those were all white reserved. So Blacks attended HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and if they wanted to go to a graduate or professional program that wasn't offered at that HBCU, some states set aside Negro tuition scholarships, Negro with a small n, for Negro students who were otherwise qualified to attend the state institutions. And they took those Negro tuition scholarships, and where did they go? They primarily went to 7 institutions. And here again, no other book has kind of shared this information. They went to, in this order almost, NYU, New York University, Columbia University, University of Chicago, University of Pennsylvania, The Ohio State, University of Michigan, Iowa, and I don't know if I said University of Pennsylvania already, but mainly those seven or eight institutions. And then they did what I call in the book an academic migration and returned with their credentials to teach in these all Black segregated schools.
Okay.
The most egregious case, and my book goes through naming the names and what happened to these Black educators, was a case cited by Thurgood Marshall where an African-American principal teacher of a one-room dirt floor schoolhouse in either Southern Georgia or Mississippi, while his students are, when it's decided that his students are going to be transferred into the previously segregated all-white school, he's replaced by a milkman. He has an undergraduate degree from Fort Valley College at the time, now Fort Valley State University, and he has a master's degree from Columbia. So that's the second thing I want people to know. When we begin to talk about credentials and Black people, let's start back here. As early as 1926, all Black Sumner High School had 41% of their teachers had master's degrees, a couple from University of Chicago, and I think one from Columbia. And by 1965, the percentage of Black teachers and Black teachers with master's degrees had gone up to something like 60-some%. By 1968, when the school is integrated and more white teachers join the faculty, the percentage of teachers with master's degrees falls below the 1926 original percentage. So this idea, President Obama used to say that if folks play by the rules, they should have a shot. Black people have been playing by the rules, even segregationist rules, evil rules, unjust rules, since our arrival here. And this is part of our history. The third thing I want them to know is that there are engines for the production of Black teachers. Today in 2022, about 50% of the nation's Black teachers come from historically Black colleges and universities, which are only 3% of the nation's 4,500 colleges and universities. So these small group of institutions produce an outsized number, or percentage rather, of Black teachers. And
well, Dr. Fenwick, we are at the end of our time. You have given us so much good information. But if people want to get a copy of Jim Crow's Pink Slip, just tell us quickly how they can get their copy.
On Amazon, and it's rated #1 in education history as a bestseller.
Oh, good job.
Or, thank you. Or you can go to Harvard Education Press's website and get it there as well.
Okay, well, we could have gone on for another 30 minutes, but we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV, and continued success with your research and just getting that word out and letting people know what actually has taken place and what, maybe we can turn it around.
Thanks, Gwen. I really appreciated being here with you and Rhonda today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and keep doing what you're doing. I would love to stay connected with you.
Let's stay connected.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we have actually gone a couple of minutes over our time for tonight, but this has been an amazing show. And our guests have they've just been so exceptional tonight. But they're exceptional every week. So I should say that out when anybody step on anybody's toes. But we're out of here for tonight. And we will see you next week. It'll be October 4th. And we'll be back with another amazing episode of Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson, signing off for tonight.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a great evening and a wonderful week.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.